Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Just tuning back in with another video on this tank showcase. This is a 15-gallon Waterbox Peninsula. And this is probably my favorite reef right now. This is the third reef that I've ever set up, and it is by far the most successful. And in terms of metrics, how I gauge that is that the least amount of issues. It's been very smooth sailing compared to my other two systems. I don't know why that is. I have some theories, and we'll get into that later in the video. The purpose of this video is kind of just a little bit of a showcase, a deep dive. I'm going to go through and explain kind of my strategy with this tank, future plans going forward with this tank, and kind of like maybe what's on my wish list. But let's jump right into it. All right, first off, let's go over the equipment on this tank. I am running a filter roller from Reef and Roll, a Kessel A80 tuna blue. I'm running a Bubble Magus protein skimmer, a Neuro 3 power head, a Innovative Marine random flow generator connected to a Axis 20 pump from AI, I believe, and I am running a Inkbird Wi-Fi controller with BRS's titanium heater. I do have a battery backup on this tank as well from it's a River 3. It's not the Pro version, and I am using a Amazon ATO. That's pretty much all the equipment on this tank, and the stand was built by yours truly with 3030 T-slot aluminum. I am running calc as my main form of alkalinity calcium, and this is the +2 by Brightwell Aquatics, so it does have some magnesium as well. Going over the Kessel A80, I will throw up some par measurements that I did take, and this is, mind you, this is with the all the way on the high end of the white balance, and a lot of people say these lights are pretty underpowered, but for an LPS only tank, for those of you who paid attention to the intro footage, there is not one piece of soft coral in here. There is also no SPS. It is all LPS. A couple of chalices, some ganies, and mainly it is Euphilia dominated with a ton of hammers and a few frog spawns. This light is plenty of power for this tank. I'm getting very good growth. Every single head that I've put into this tank was a single head frag, and there's quite of the Euphilia grow pretty quick actually, and some of them are up to about 8 heads now. Some maybe a little bit more. Like the peach hammer grows really fast in this tank. The frog spawns don't grow as quick for me, and I've had some issues with the chalices getting stung by the ganies, so they have been relocated to the far back corner. Going over some highlights of this tank for me are definitely the wide array of color assortment hammers. I tried to place them where they were not completely bunched up and kind of maximize the contrast. Another thing I really like about this tank is the open stand with the aluminum framing. It's very appealing aesthetically, and I like the height of the tank. So the stand itself is 36 inches high, which is like the perfect viewing height in my opinion for this type of tank. It sits pretty much close to my eye level when I'm on my computer doing work, and it's just very enjoyable to me. I spend probably more time looking at this tank than my other tanks at the moment. So that just kind of goes to show. And there's something just so mesmerizing about the movement of Euphilia. Like, who does not like that just flowy interaction with the polyps in the flow? Don't get me wrong, you know, I do like SPS and I like soft corals, but for something about Euphilia, it's just one of my favorite corals. So obviously that's what inspired me to kind of do a Euphilia dominant tank, and then over time I did kind of put some overflow of some of the LPS into this tank just to kind of test things out. Obviously you'll see in the footage here, I will kind of put some video footage of when the tank was still running, but I actually did not capture one of the largest problems that this tank did run into, and that is a massive cyanoalgae cyanobacteria, excuse me, bloom. I was dealing with it for a few months, and I took things a lot slower with this tank. I was being very strategic, and I kind of let things just play out. When the cyno happened, I believe I did just a small water change, like 20%, and I took the avenue of, you know what, I'm just not going to touch it. I'm not going to scrub it. I'm not even going to use ChemiClean. I'm just going to let it play out. So I let it play out. I did reduce my feeding a little bit. The first inhabitant in this tank was a blue damsel, and he got put in here because he was a jerk in my other tank, and he was just constantly harassing the clowns, even though he was smaller than them at the time. So I moved him out and put him in basically his little jail over here for the time being. Um, Now, I would say for me, I've used Alpha Reef, I've used 3-part dosing, and I have used calc. So the 3 different systems went through different phases. I'm still leaning towards I like calc a lot more than the other types of maintaining your elements. This is just kind of my personal preference that I'm leaning towards. It's also the most simple. Now, yes, am I being a little bit risky by using it in my ATO? Yes. Now, am I using a smart ATO? Yes. So, as long as nothing goes wrong with the sensors completely failing, but even if it does, there is a separate motherboard that will basically stop it from overfilling. Now, obviously, the only risk is, you're running your pumps dry and then you burn up your pump, or your pump going bad because it's sitting in a very caustic high pH solution. But I do keep an extra ATO pump on hand, and I will probably replace them probably maybe every 2 years. I did use one for over like a year, and it's still in pretty good condition. I took it apart and looked at it, and didn't look too dramatic. But I like the simplicity of the calc, and I really like the pH boost. And I think the pH boost really does wonders for the tank. I was struggling with low pH in my other systems. To be completely honest, I have no idea what's going on with the pH in this system. Just because I opted to keep it really simple, like no controllers, no really fancy equipment. Now, don't get me wrong, the filter roller is kind of fancy, but it was an extra piece of equipment that I had laying around that I incorporated into this build. For future plans on this tank, most likely, I will change out the lighting on this tank, and most of this Euphilia is going to go into a larger system that I'm planning for in the future. I was fortunate enough to pick up a pretty large 200-gallon display that I will be working on. So most of the Euphilia will be going into that display tank once that's ready. And this tank is probably going to be converted into a quarantine slash. I kind of want the challenge of doing a SPS Acropora dominated Nano. So most likely I will switch this light out with I'm thinking an XR15. Hopefully that should be enough. I think so. Probably running at pretty high intensity, and I'm going to make this into an SPS dominant Nano just for a little bit of a challenge. And I think I will still keep the ALK in the ATO, and then for extra demand, I may try Alpha Reef on top of that, but I'm a little bit conflicted. I have seen some successful systems running that combination before, and I've also seen some people kind of stray away from that due to maybe some potential long-term issues with the elements conflicting. I will be experimenting with that. Worst case scenario, if that doesn't work out, I may do just on top of the calc, maybe some 2-part, some DIY 2-part, or maybe even the balling method if I want to get really complicated, but I kind of want to keep it simple, right? Calc in the ATO, using the auto top off, I'm fine with that as long as the precautions are in place. And then for any additional calc or any additional alkalinity demand, I would just close the gap with Alpha Reef. Then I only need 1 dosing pump. So kind of keep it simple, and it will basically be a housed quarantine system for any incoming acropora or SPS that's going into the main display. Really want to stay away from red bugs, black bugs, white bugs, whatever, flatworms, anything that's coming in. So that's kind of like the future plans for this tank. But until then, I will probably get some more enjoyment out of this tank, as getting that display is challenging and it's has some roadblocks ahead. So I'll be kind of getting some more coverage on that coming up, and I will also be uploading a new update on the 20-gallon Reef. A few more things I forgot to mention are the flow in this tank. So my flow settings, I'm kind of discovering that corals love pulse, at least in my experience, and I do implement some like randomized flow. So if you're using a MP40, it would be like a Reef Crest, and I believe the Neuro 3s call it something else. But pretty much 3/4 of a 24-hour period, it's on a pulse mode, and the rest of the time it's on more of that Reef Crest randomizing flow, where it's dipping down to like 10%, ramping up to like 45. The Euphilia love the pulse. The Ganies in this tank are they just do so well. This green Gani in the front left corner started like literally the frog was the size of my pinky, and it has grown to pretty much maybe like the skeleton is maybe half the size of a tennis ball. But when it's fully expanded, the polyps are very, very long and reachy, and I found that out the hard way when it started stinging into my acans and some of my chalices. A couple other things why this tank, I believe, is so successful is I've taken a very hands-off approach. I don't feed the corals. I'm only relying on feeding the fish. And I do feed a variety of foods, but mainly I'm feeding mysis. Also, I did use some some reef rubble from Aqua Biomics, and maybe it's placebo in my mind, but this tank has had pretty much no bacterial issues. The only time I lost a head on a hammer was because it got stung by a Gani, and the only time I lost an acan was because it also got stung by a Gani. So those are the only two corals that I have lost in this tank, and they were basically due to my negligence of not watching the Gani when it was fully extended with the polyps. I don't change that much on this tank. I am running it at 77 degrees. I do think that does help with the LPS, and there's not super intense lighting on them. So I pretty much have had like no algae blooms in this tank, no other weird bacterial issues. And mainly, I think that's because of the seeded media, and also I'm pretty hands off with the tank. I probably change the water once a month on this tank at this point, just because every single time I check my nitrates and phosphates, I'm like well within the red fill ratio. My nitrates stay around 20 to 15, and my phosphates are like always right on like 0.05, or sometimes they go up to like 0.08. I've never really seen my phosphates go to 0.1, like almost never. So I'm pretty well within that red filled ratio. And I think that's why this tank is doing so well. I am starting to get some better colorations out of the hammers as they kind of grow a little bit more. And my favorite one is probably the hot mess type like hammer, and also the juicy fruit hammer. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in really quick. But thank you guys for watching. And if you guys want to follow along any future videos, you guys already know what to do. Any other questions or anything that I forgot to cover, just go ahead and ask it in the comments, and I'll get back to you guys as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.